All right, so now we got people dropping in here, which is great. All right, so for those of you who are dropping in here, welcome to this webinar. I will try today to look at the actual camera because I always look everywhere else and except for that camera. So I'll look straight forward today. Let's give people another minute or two to just drop in. I know that I always get stressed with Zooms and IT overall. Me and Alex, we're getting old, I think, getting worried about IT. So that's how you know that you're getting old. So for you who are young and able to do this quickly, great. For you who are a little bit slower, no worries as well. So briefly, until we see if there's any more people coming in, we're very happy to have you here today. We're going to discuss a very interesting topic that I get a lot of questions about, and I don't even do egg donor consultations only, which our lovely donor program director, Alex, here does. So I'm sure you also hear this question, Alex, on the topic of, known, unknown. We use words as anonymous, semi-anonymous, open. So there's a lot of terminology going around. I do get a lot of those questions, as does Alex. So we thought we'd host this webinar today to kind of make it more clear on what is the terminology and what does that actually mean to have a known donor or open donor or anonymous donor, etc. So we're going to speak about that today, and a couple of other things. And maybe if we have time, we'll even take a sneak peek into the Hatch donor database, which some of you might have already been into. But if not, this is a great first time to see that database. And we can tell you a little bit more about that as well as we peek into that. But let's get going, I think, so we can keep our timeline and get you all people home in the right time, I was going to say. I miss doing in-person events. Those are the best, right? And we can say things like getting you back home, but at least giving you back your day, right? That's something that we want to do as well. All right, I hope everybody can see this. Alex looks happy, so I'll assume that this is all visible. Great.
Yeah.
Just a couple of IPs of ours and lovely, lovely surrogates. I say this every webinar, I think, but I just love these pictures. Obviously getting pictures after this stage as well when they have their lovely babies. Our clients have their lovely babies is a super nice time. So that is just something that's beautiful, like the result of this very exciting and special journey. So just showing them off a little bit there. Let's talk a little bit about today's schedule. So we're going to do a short introduction. We're going to talk a little bit about Hatch and PFCLA, Hatch's in-house clinic. We won't get too long on that, just because we want to, focus on the things that we are here to discuss, which is basically, first of all, figuring out the terminology, right? So we use words as open, known, semi-known, anonymous, etc. So we just want to clear out a little bit with the help of Alex, who is the expert. I just recently learned about what open actually means in terms of Food and Drug Administration regulations, etc. So we're going to hand that over to Alex so we get the right answers there on what does it actually mean to have these kind of donors. We're also going to talk a little bit about if there is a right choice, right? We get a lot of questions about, for example, me as a father through egg donation get questions on, what did you choose? And, what was right, what is right? And what should I do? And, is there a right choice or not is worth discussing. Alex will mention where like the industry is going, if you put it that way, and what donors want or don't want, and discuss then if there's a right choice in that sense with the bunny ears there, indicating that like right is maybe not the right way to put it, but we'll also talk a little bit about methods of keeping in touch. Also interesting in this kind of context. Will I be in touch with my donor? Will I not be in touch with my donor? Should I do that? How much? And what is actually available, right? How can we keep in touch and what are my options? Alex, sorry, will mention do you call that organizations, Alex, or databases? What would you call the donor sibling registry and that other option we're talking about?
I would say they are third-party databases in a
Okay.
sense. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, for kind of keeping in touch. So we'll discuss that a little bit as well, and then maybe have a sneak peek. I was hoping to open up our Hatch database already before, but maybe Alex has it ready. I'm sure you're in there all the time as well. Not that you need a donor, but you're the donor program director, so I'm sure you're in there looking that everything is in order. But we might take a sneak peek there, but we'll leave that to the very end if we have time. If we don't get there, no worries. If you're registered already, then you know how to navigate it. If you're not, we'll give you some contact info at the end of how you can go about that. Basically, you can register on our website for the database. And then we'll have a short Q&A if there are any questions from anybody. So keep the questions coming if you have any, and we'll address them towards the end, but just kind of keep them coming. We have ways of keeping them in our little notes here. All right, today's host, I'm Edvin. Hopefully you recognize me there. I am a little bit heavier these days, but I ate a lot for Christmas and New Year and it hasn't gone away. I did not hit the gym like other people did, but I'm healthy, which is the most important part. So I'm the international manager here at Hatch and our clinic. I'm a two-time father through egg donation and surrogacy. So I've been through that twice. I'm also international in that sense that I'm not in the US. I'm not a US citizen. We have team members, obviously, that are US citizens that live in the US, take care of our domestic intended parents. And we have Alex for the donor part, for example, as well. But for me, I did that internationally, so from Europe. So that's kind of my background there a little bit. So I have a 4.5-year-old, also born through surrogacy, not only egg donation, and also now a 10-month-old. So if I do look tired, then there's the answer of why that is. Alex, introduce yourself briefly, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Alex. I'm the program director of the donor program specifically. I've been with this agency for a long time, going on 16 years at this point. Wonderful agency, the best, not the best. Well, I would say the best. I'm being partial, but the first is what I meant to say. The first donor agency to exist in one of the very early surrogacy programs. So really honored to be part of this organization and help intended parents, reach their goal, to have a family, which is the ultimate, the ultimate joy in life, I think. So I'd love to take care of our donors, love to take care of our intended parents. It's just been really thrilling for me through these years.
Yeah, I think your experience is amazing. I mean, that's not only a long time, which I think is the first thing you think of, but so much experience. I mean, 16 years, you've been through changes, I'm sure, in this information part, which are kind of immense, right? I remember you said once, sorry for all of them watching, but it is a fun thing, that in the beginning, you went from having intended parents actually have to come to the clinic to actually look at a folder of actual donors. And now obviously we're at, the digital age when we go inside and we look at them in the database, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it all. We've seen where it was, actual paper profiles, handwritten things, to moving on to actual databases, and then databases extending even more and just being more user friendly to the one we have now, which I love, which we, custom coded ourselves to make it the most user friendly option that you can hopefully find out there. And still, open to tweaks and making more changes as we go. But yeah, it's definitely been lots and lots of changes and progression. I would say, especially in the last 10 years and even in the last 5 years, lots of different things coming up. Yeah.
There's always things going around and going, moving forward and changing quite quickly. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so that's a little bit about us and who we are. So let's briefly just mention, I'll keep it very brief so we have time for the other stuff, about Hatch and PFCLA here, just to give you a sense of kind of how we organized this journey for our clients. So basically, we consist of 2 entities, one of them being Hatch, which is our egg donation and surrogacy agency. So I've been around for about 4 years here, so I have some catching up to do to Alex, but hopefully I'll never catch up to you, Alex, because you'll be here always. So egg donation, surrogacy, legal, we work with amazing third-party attorneys, top of the game in the US. We also work with a lot of local attorneys. If any of you are international here, we know a lot of local attorneys in different countries, given that we have a large portion of our clients actually being outside of the US. So we have that support as well. Insurance, amazing insurance experts to guide, our international intended parents through newborn insurance, and also look at the surrogacy insurance, of course, very important. And I would say Hatch goes very far with insurance there as far as what we cover, which is amazing. I remember my first journey, having all of that be variable. It's very scary what you're going to pay in the end. So it's quite different here. And all the coordination that this takes, of course, as well, is done on the Hatch side. So I think we're up to the 34th year of Hatch, right, Alex?
And that is correct. Yeah, we've been around since 1991, so 34 years this year. Yeah.
Crazy. Well, I was 1 year of age when this agency was created, so I think that's yeah.
Well, I won't say I'm geriatric at that point.
Yeah, we won't mention that. On the other hand, we also have our in-house clinic, which is Pacific Fertility Center Los Angeles. We call it PFCLA for short, because people never seem to remember the name if you tell them the long name. So these two work very closely together for our clients that want to kind of work with an all-inclusive approach, kind of that covers both agency and clinic in one place. Our teams work closely together day by day, agency and clinic. We are definitely different entities, of course. There's some things we can share, other things we can't share because of patient privacy, etc. But the team knows each other and work with each other a lot, which creates that kind of golden standard of we have the same procedures, we have the same standards, we know what we want, which is, alive birth, obviously happy, healthy, and we work towards that goal together as a one company kind of approach, which does help. I've tried kind of both approaches. My first journey was more of that fragmented approach, different agency, different clinic. And then the second time I worked with Hatch for my second journey, and I always use the lovely PFCLA for my journeys. And I felt like that was a different kind of experience. So depending on what clients need, they can work with just Hatch, just PFCLA. But a lot of our clients do what we call the Peace of Mind program, which is a fixed fee program, basically covering everything that we kind of mentioned here with that one team experience and really kind of pushing the medical forward. We have doctors in-house, medical records reviews earlier on the process, uterus lining checks as the only agency, which is amazing for our surrogates before we actually match them with intended parents. So just to mention a couple of the things that we can do when we have this kind of setup and combination. So that's who we are. And PFCLA have been around for 30 years as well, I believe, if not more now, 31. So it's been around for a very long time as well. So there's well over 6 decades of experience of IVF, surrogacy, egg donation, which is amazing. And just a couple of numbers here. We talked about the experience here. We talked about the Hatch being the first donor agency, which is amazing. The number of births, which is just a vast, crazy number. I feel like to see all these babies lined up, like it never stops. But that's just amazing. I guess my little 10 months old is somewhere in that number now. We have clients from all over the world. So if you are international, it might be scary, like, does the agency have the capacity to understand my situation? Like, have they worked with IPs from my background before? Can I connect with somebody from my home country to speak about the experience, to get some support? Yes to all of those answers. Like, we've done all of that before. We work with many, many different clients from different countries. Like I said, local attorneys, etc. So we'll definitely kind of hook you up with the right resources to give you not only a great journey, but also a safe journey, which is what it's all about as well. Most of our staff are actually previous surrogates and intended parents. I think our staff of lovely ladies have done over 50 surrogacy journeys so far as surrogates, which is mind-boggling in another way. So that's very important for us, that kind of balance between professional, absolutely coordinated, etc., but also personal, right? We want to remember that the human beings involved, high stakes, having a child is a huge deal. And we want to remember that that's about the emotional side. We've got to remember that as well. And we've been through it, so we do know it, and hopefully can guide you better through that with that experience. And then we just mentioned a bit about our doctors, of course. We have that physician oversight in-house, so we can actually look at things earlier, which is great. Catching things before the medical screening is amazing. Like, we will probably disqualify a bit more of surrogates, but we're just like catching that before and making it a better experience and a quicker, from match to pregnancy, which is also important. So we're lucky to have amazing doctors. We have 5 in total as of now at the clinic that we work closely with. And Alex, you know them very well from the donor side of things as well. I know you always chatting with them on that side as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I love how cohesive we are with the clinic, which is really nice.
Yeah. All right, perfect. So let's jump into what you're actually here for. I was going to say, figuring out the terminology here with egg donation. So please take it away, Alex, and give us a bit of an insight of, what does all of this mean in terms of terminology?
Absolutely. So the main thing that you will notice is when you're matching with an egg donor, you will see terms such as, an open donor, a known donor, a semi-known donor, anonymous donor. All of these have meaning behind them, right? So an open donor, as you can see here, is per FDA regulation, they have to be an open donor. What does that mean? It means that there is an FDA specific questionnaire that donors have to go over. And if they answer yes to any of those questions, and these questions are really broad, right? I mean, it could be anything like, did you get a tattoo or piercing in the last 12 months? Or did you live in this particular country in the world for between these years, or anything like that? Or did you donate, did you receive a tissue donation in the past? Those specific questions. If they answer yes, then they have to be an open donor. And that means that, when it comes time for legal contracts, both your names and the donor's names will be visible to all parties. And there will be a required one-time meeting. Usually for us, we do them very easily through an anonymous Zoom, platform. I mediate these meetings. They're short, just about 15 minutes long. And it doesn't mean that you have to have contact in the future or anything like that, or that you have to build a relationship with them. It just means that you have to do these things in order to have the embryo transferred onto you or to your surrogate if you're using a surrogate. So if you are using a surrogate, the caveat there is that the person carrying that embryo has to be the one to meet the donor if it's an open donor. So then it gets a little bit more complicated because now you're needing to have the donor meet the surrogate whenever that match with your surrogate happens, which those can be lengthy in time. You will find that across the board. Wait times are there. So it's a bit risky to, if you're using a surrogate, to go with a donor who is required to be open, because if that meeting doesn't happen, if for whatever reason the donor is not available later, and the surrogate is ready, for you, and that meeting doesn't happen, then those beautiful embryos are not able to be transferred. So that's
Yeah.
one thing to keep in mind when you are looking into donors and they are marked as open.
Yeah.
Also, an open donor, the child can have future contact, right? Now, please remember that, even contractually, you can't force a donor to have contact with the child, but for the most part, donors really walk into this process with a very understanding concept of wanting to do the right thing for that future donor conceived person. So, for the most part, we have facilitated tons and tons of these meetings through the 30 plus years that we've been doing this. But again, it's one of those things that you just have to go into it with realistic expectations. But that's what open donor overall encompasses. If you're looking at a known donor, that would be something like someone that a friend, a family member, something like that, that makes them a known donor to you. Or if it's per your request and everybody agrees to that type of setup, then it would be an open donor to you. So same thing, we would do introductions, and then you can decide to keep in touch. There are several, a couple of platforms that we will go into in a bit, or as simple as creating an email account that we would exchange with both parties, and then you can keep in touch that way. But again, just, I will throw that in again, just having realistic expectations that nobody knows how they're going to feel, 5, 10, 18 years from now. So, just keeping that in mind. Semi-known donor, it's not really, we don't necessarily use this particular terminology a lot for hatch, but what that means is just, again, it just falls somewhere in between an open donor and a known donor. It could be something where maybe you want to see the donor more on a live version of them, in terms of meeting them through an anonymous Zoom meeting like we would do otherwise, but without necessarily exchanging names or name or anything like that, or any type of promise for future contact. But maybe you just want to get a motion visual and just kind of see before you actually, move forward with that particular donor. For example, anonymous donor that is, no ID is disclosed, privacy is definitely secured throughout the entire process. And again, it doesn't mean that that particular anonymous donor would not be open in the future to, having contact with the donor conceived person if something were to come up. It's just that you're entering into the process on an anonymous basis. So those are the 4 terms that you'll more than not see when you're looking into egg donation.
Awesome. Thanks for that insight. What would you say, like, if you look at the semi-known donor, like what would Hatch use in terms of terminology? I've seen semi-open donor somewhere. Is that kind of the equivalent to that?
Yeah, pretty much. Semi-open, semi-known, same thing. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
And I love that you mentioned with an anonymous donor, that doesn't mean that that's actually the case. Later that person wouldn't be open to meeting, because that's actually a preconception of my own that, looking at an anonymous donor, yeah, that person, you won't be able to communicate with that person in the future. But that's great to know that that's actually possible. So it could change if necessary, and everybody's on board with that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would say even the trend is leaning more toward, donors, because there's so much more information nowadays out there. Donors are walking into this process with a more open mind and understanding that this is, in a way, their own future family planning journey as well.
Yeah.
Are they going to disclose to their future families, their children, their partners that they end up with? Remember, donors are usually younger, right? So they're not necessarily at that point where they're having families yet or married or anything like that. They're usually going to school, pursuing their careers. So these are things that we are really focusing on, as well as the education for our donors coming in to understand that, this is a long-term sort of journey that you're doing. You're not just donating and then forget about it. You can try to, right? But I mean, be realistic that this is something that you'll have to think about in the future as well. So they're, for the most part, they're really great. They understand it, and they're very open to that.
Yeah, that's perfect. I was also gonna mention FDA for the ones that are not familiar with that kind of abbreviation, is the Food and Drug Administration in the
That's
US.
right. Yeah.
I should put a little star there as well and put that down somewhere. Yeah, and I think another thing that you mentioned, which is great to just repeat once, is contractual things, like wanting to stay in touch with your donor, wanting her to meet the child, etc. Like agreeing is one thing, like vice versa, right? Anonymous to open, and the other way around. Like
Right.
get questions, we'll put in the agreement that we should keep in touch, etc. Like you said, Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, that like long term she can still decide for whatever she wants, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. At the end of the day, whether or not, whatever the agreement states, it's more based on the, intent, but there is nothing that really you can do to force the donor to have that contact, to be available, or anything like that. At the end of the day, it really is their choice. Yeah. So
Yeah, just a good thing to clarify there, because I've gotten that sometimes, like, oh, well, what about this and what about that? And you're like, yeah, but still, wouldn't be able to like make sure.
yeah.
Or a repeat donor, right? Sometimes people are interested in having the same donor come back again, and putting that into contractually, I would assume would be the same thing. That's something that
Yeah.
hopefully happens, but it's not necessarily.
Absolutely. You got that right. Yeah. There are all kinds of different scenarios. But again, as I see the trends sort of moving more and more that way in terms of, openness and donors understanding the long-term implications of the donor conceived people that are going to come out of those, matches and cycles that they do. There's a lot better understanding and willingness to have that contact and understand that, that's something that they understand they want the child to have, and if they have questions and things like that. So I think it's all moving in the right direction, and everyone is falling in line with that.
Yeah, perfect. And it's kind of a borderline actually to the topic, which is like, is there a right choice, etc., for doing this?
Right.
Touch upon a couple of things, but walk us through, like, if we would be like hard line here now, well, what is the positive and negative aspects of choosing a known donor? So what would you say that the positives is of having like a known donor that you actually can, communicate with, etc.?
Absolutely, absolutely. So those are also there are different levels to that, right? So again, if you're going with someone that is a known in terms of a friend or a family member, obviously the positives are that you will have access to that person. The donor conceived person will have access to that person for the most part. Some of the challenges there, I would say, is, be very sure and clear that, the stipulations are very clear between you and that friend or family member, that you have, a solid contract between you and them, because you want to make sure that with something, where genetics are involved and biological material and, that closeness with that person, you want to make sure that the lines are clear and the boundaries are clear, so that there is no issue later on, right? So that would be one thing that, while it is great, and I think it's so lovely when friends and family members do that gesture for someone else, you just want to go into it. Again, I'm huge on realistic expectations, just understanding all the different things that could come out of that, right? So having really clear communication with that person and having a clear path as to how you want that to look is going to be huge. The positives obviously are, mostly for the child, for this donor conceived person, is for them to be able to have questions answered and have closure and have understanding. I think that being honest and open about, your journey to the child, early on and beyond, is important as well. They're very resilient. They understand, they will understand more than not if you don't say anything and it comes out later. So in terms of open or known, the advantages are that you have that contact, you have that sort of, peace of mind of knowing that the child will have closure, answers to questions that they may have about their lineage and things like that. Health, if anything does come up, health wise, there could be some answers to some questions that you may need to know. So those are things that are great. Now, keep in mind that, for us, even on anonymous donations, if something does come up health wise, we do everything that we can to get those answers, to get clarity, to get, additional testing done if necessary from the donors. As long as we can reach them, they're still around and all those things are agreed upon. But we do have a very good track record of doing that. So that's one thing. Now, one thing I always advise is, if you want to meet the donor, early on and build on sort of a relationship or just be very open with them, just understand that, it could also be difficult if for whatever reason that cycle doesn't work out the way that you hoped, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could have the match, they go in for the retrieval, you create embryos, maybe all the, embryos don't work out, the transfers don't work, and now you've already kind of poured yourself into this sort of relationship with the donor, or you've bonded and nothing came of it, and now that becomes a little bit difficult to sort of have to walk away from, or not. Maybe you just have a great friendship and great, it's wonderful. But these are things that I always say, don't go too strong too fast. It's always good if what you want, the intent is to have that communication and that openness with the donor. Just kind of take it on the slower side in the beginning, and then as things progress, then you guys can keep in touch. And again, keep in mind, I'm going to say the fact that they are young and they have sort of their lives are sort of taking shape in their own. You also have to take into account that it can be a bit overwhelming for the donor to have tons and tons of communication options and tons of openness. It can be a lot for them as well. So I say take it a little bit on the slower side in the beginning, and as things progress, it can really translate into a great journey and friendship, or relationship of any kind. So overall, I don't think there are really any negatives, honestly. I think it's always great. As you see here, exactly. It's again, the negative would be that if a failed cycle happens and you met and you've built that bond, it can just be a rougher sort of letdown. It's a
Yeah.
tiny little heartbreak, right?
Yeah.
But more and more, as you see here, the industry is really moving more toward open cycles, open donations, or at least having some type of option to communicate or option to have access to the donor. And there's some great platforms, which again, we'll discuss in a bit in terms of facilitating that, or using your agency as a facilitator, using, the clinic as a point of contact. Even your attorney can be a point of contact as well. If for whatever reason, the agency you're working with, maybe, more, there are ways and there are paths for you to be able to make that contact to the donor in some way if needed.
Yeah, perfect. And I think it's interesting to see, like you said, like the industry is moving towards open, or in that sense is, I guess, more a friend or family, etc., but open donation or knowing things about each other, being able to reach each other seems like a very sound way to kind of look at it and move forward. So that's great to hear. Yeah, let's look at the two kind of options that we've pulled out here, and when it comes to how to keep in touch, etc. If you're not doing that, directly through your whatever. So walk us through a little bit here. I mean, I guess this is a little bit of like how you can kind of de-accelerate, I guess, from like the most like you can communicate with emails or texts or sending pictures or even meeting, of course, regularly.
Right.
I know I have some friends that meet their donor once a year. Well, we do like the same with the surrogate, but not with the donor actually. So whatever regularly means. Or just like sharing pictures or milestones, potentially meeting in the future. I think that's more of the setup that we kind of had with our donor, or even the third one, actually, just like sharing pictures of milestones. I think that's where we are at. just trying to kind of like keep up some kind of, information, even though it's not very much.
Mhm.
Or just like you said before, just having some information for future purposes, being able to reach each other. And then we have the fifth, which is, I don't know, maybe wouldn't say that it's uncommon still, right, Alex? It's just that the industry is
No,
moving
it's
in
not.
the opposite direction.
Right, right. And it really just comes down to, everybody's journey is different, right? Every intended parent has a different path that they want to ultimately take in their family growing journey. So what I would say is I would probably see between 3, 4, and 5 being the most popular options. It's rare that we, unless it's a known donor, someone that you met and or you became friends with or something like that, then yes, 1 and 2 would be the way that you would typically see. But for the most part, you know, um, you will find that some intended parents don't want to even really, have any contact, or, they really do want to remain anonymous. It doesn't mean that they won't disclose to the child or anything like that. They just prefer to go into it in that way. Um, and donors too. Some donors do prefer to do it on an anonymous basis. And again, it doesn't mean that they are not open to meeting the child in the future or providing answers and things like that. So yeah, I would say, 3, 4, 5 being the most common. And, eventually it probably will translate more into 2, but for now, I think 3, 4, 5 are the ones that we see all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. All right, so tell us a little bit about these two here, and kind of as methods of keeping in touch or in some way knowing about each other for long term.
Absolutely. So one of the great things about these platforms, the donor sibling registry has been around for a long time. Now their platform, I would say, is a bit more archaic, is not as user friendly as I would say EDC Nexus, which is an upcoming. Well, they are already, very prominent with a lot of clinics and agencies. We actually will be starting to be part of their program in February. So what that means is, these are platforms where intended parents and donors alike create accounts, and they're able to update their information. And for example, for EDC Nexus, you're able to communicate with each other. You're able to message each other if you want, send those pictures and milestones, and have that communication. And you also will be able to have access to any updated information. So they know every year, the system will check in with the donor and make sure that anything new, with their family history or health history or anything like that, if they do additional cycles, all the items that pertain to that cycle tend to be uploaded into this platform, which I really like. Donor sibling registry is also great, right? It's kind of it's a bit more old school. You are able to connect to your donor, but it's a bit more Wild West as opposed to EDC Nexus is a little bit more curated to each individual donor. Donors can actually go into it and have a very user-friendly platform to update information. And so that translates into what the intended parent sees. So both of these pretty much are platforms that you can choose to register to. You can have the donor register to that. We will automatically start registering our donors to EDC Nexus starting in February. So if you decide that, you want to register yourself, you would just do so. We would send you an invitation, you would register, and then you would be able to connect to your donor through that platform. And it still would not give your information, your personal contact information. It's all mediated. It's all, made so that it's private, and it's up to you. It's up to the parties to decide how, open you want to be. But at least it gives a very organized setting to be able to keep information up to date, current. And then, as years go by, you'll have one place where you can actually log in on your own and just have it all readily available for you in terms of the journey that you did. So both platforms are great. Just so you guys know, pretty much across the board for these is usually $199 to register and have that sort of lifetime membership. For both egg donor and intended parent is both each $199. Just for you guys, if you're thinking about it, that's the cost that you're typically looking at for these things. But they're both really great. And again, this is kind of because of, the ways that things are changing. I mean, some states have specific legislations where they do require that donors, update their information either every year or every 3 years to make sure that, they are available to the donor conceived person in the future to provide information and details. So these are all great platforms to help assist in these ways going forward. So we're excited about those.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's also like you can have somebody's number, lose that number, or lose the contact
Exactly.
information. So this just kind of secures that in a much better way, I feel like. So I wish I was on
Absolutely.
that with our donor, to be honest. But hey,
Yes.
let's see if there's ever a second donor journey. I don't think so. Who knows?
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Oh boy, here we go. All right. Thank you so much, Ali. That's great. And I think this is great information because honestly, looking at this journey from the inside, we sometimes think that, these are all known things, right? But I had no idea, for example, doing my own egg donation journey, etc., that this was even a thing. I had no idea at all. So I think
Right.
that's great. And I hope the ones, watching either live or the recording, I think, look into this and see if this is something for you. It might save you a lot of effort and time and search in the future, which is obviously great.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, all right. So I think we'll skip looking into the Hatch database just because of timing a little bit. But it's open on our website to register. So you just go there, answer a couple of questions, and you're into the database. And people usually ask sometimes, is this the full database? Like, we have the largest ignore database in the US. It still doesn't seem to be enough sometimes, but you will have full access to the database. And there's great emails going out, right, Alex, like on our future donors, etc., as well,
Yeah.
for like a little bit specific at that time. We want to kind of lift forward for different reasons. Could be education, could be something great they've done, achievements, or just generally other stuff.
Yeah.
So go there, register, and you'll have a great time looking at the donors, I'm sure. Even better after that, if you want to have a chat with either Alex or me or any of our lovely team members, of course, you can also schedule a consultation, where we sit down and we speak about everything in detail. If you would happen to be an international intended parent looking for egg donation with surrogacy, or surrogacy only, of course, you can reach out to me via email. If you look for egg donation, doesn't matter where you are. If you're looking for egg donation only, you can also reach out to Alex, international or domestic, if you're looking for that. Or you can go to hatch.us, obviously, all of you, and look into that form there. If you register to the database, for example, you'll automatically be directed to the right person based on what you need and want. So look through there, and we'd love to see you on a call. I hope we get a sense of that we're kind people that are taking care of our clients, and we would love to kind of walk you through your questions and your specific situation. Everybody's different. I think I've sometimes say I've heard it all, and then you kind of realize, nope, not even close. And I'm sure you feel the same way, Alex, even after 16 years.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that
To
one
this
was
day.
on this, aspect of the journey.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
To this day, we still
it
get
is
things
great.
that we're like, oh, wow. Okay.
All right, so let's jump into the Q&As,
Mhm.
see if somebody has any questions. We got one, which is a little bit worrying, but we'll fix it. The donor profiles aren't currently loading. Is there a known issue? So that's a great
Oh,
way to start off the Q&A.
right. So there shouldn't be an issue. I know that they just launched a bunch of security updates to the database. So if you could let me know. I know it's a bit of a pain, but if you would, sending a screenshot is always great. I will check with the developers to see if there's something going on with the database, but there shouldn't be a problem. I would say to just give it a little bit and try again in about an hour or so. Unless your browser, but every browser should work because they've just updated everything. So let me look into it and see. I would say to check in about an hour. If by any chance you're able to send me a screenshot to alex@hatch.us of what the error message is that it's giving you, that's super, super helpful. But I'll definitely be checking into this.
Yeah, definitely have a look. I mean, like Alex said, there shouldn't be anything there. It's up and running all the time. But yeah, we'll have a look and see if there's anything. And we also have the email. So like if there's anything known, we'll shoot you an email and let you know. But it should be all fine. So sometimes it's just about refreshing, right? I'm sometimes amazed how easy solutions work the best. Just like refreshing the site, coming back a bit later should work.
Mhm.
All right. Well, are there any other questions that you have? Feel free to put them in there. Like Alex has said, she's been around for 16 years doing this, so you have almost no better person at this stage to ask. I've gone through egg donation myself, so I can definitely cover those parts as well. So We have run out of our time. We'll stick around obviously for another minute unless I see that people have left. But it was really nice to speak to you all. If you don't have any questions, feel free to leave. But we really want to thank you for coming, and I hope it was useful. So we do have a question here about, is there an option for the child to contact the donor when they turn 18, even with anonymous donation?
That's a great question. So yes, absolutely. So, the child can always reach out if that does come up. We are there to help facilitate, even if it started off as an anonymous donation. Again, we always ask our donors when we're screening them to accept them to our program, if they're open to meeting the child 18 years from now. And again, most of the donors say, yeah, I'm okay with that. Understanding that nobody knows how they're going to feel that many years ahead. But for the most part, like I said, we have a very strong track record. So you would just reach out to us. We would reach out to the donor. We would make that contact exchange. Or as I also am very excited about, we will, starting in February, if for any reason you matched with a donor after February, they will be in the EDC Nexus database automatically. So that would be a platform where you would be able to just create an account. We would send you you would just let us know. We would send you an invitation. You would just register, and then they would bill you directly for that $199 lifetime membership fee. And then you'd be able to connect to your donor through that platform. So yeah, there are definitely ways to do that. This other question, if there's a donor we like who is enlisted open, can the agency share a letter with the donor explaining why we'd like open? Yeah, absolutely. So we're not going to get in the way of you guys. If that's something that you really want, for us it's really, as long as everybody agrees, we will work toward that, right? So even if she's anonymous, you want to present a letter, we'll present it to her on your behalf. And if that's something that, changes her status, then we'll treat it as such. But yeah, absolutely. We're just not going to get in the way. We don't have a hard, policy on this. We just, as long as it's informed consent and everybody agrees to it, who are we to get in the way of that decision, right? So yeah, absolutely.
All right. Perfect. Thanks so much for all the questions. You're doing great. We really
Yeah.
love the questions. We have one more here, if you can hang on. The details shared by the donors on the platform, are they verified? For example, medical records in the past, achievements, etc. Great question.
Yes, another good question. So yes, we do. If you see something specific, like she attended an Ivy League school, we can give identifiable information on those schools, obviously. But if you see something very specific about schooling, we do get transcripts, we didn't get copies of their certificates and things like that. So if they are verified, we will say something more specific. Usually what happens for medical records, if a donor is previous, we always request their medical records. We don't put them back on the database until we have records for those previous cycles. So yes, and we do background checks on our egg donors as well. So we are pretty thorough in terms of the donors that we accept. And we are already very picky, right? Only a small percentage, about 5% of all applicants that we get do make it into the database. So long answer short, yes, we do verify.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think the context, like the additional detail, is great, because that's also a very common question about how much, etc. Like, why not everything? Like, there's only so much any agency can do. And I know you and your team go way beyond, like, what we necessarily should, if I put it that way, or what like is required or whatever.
Right.
So yeah, so I think it's a great question, and a great answer for that.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, you're surprising us with great questions. What's happening?
Yes, I love it.
We love it. All right. Well, I want to thank you once again. If there's nobody else that wants to jump in last minute, I'll just hold it open for another minute. But I hope everybody learned something today. I know we are at different stages. Some of us are more experienced research, some less. But I hope there was something great for everybody here. And Alex, obviously, thank you for joining us and answering these questions.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for hosting, Edvin. It was great. Thanks for everybody showing up.
Yeah. So everybody stay safe. Alex, thanks so much. And yeah, hopefully we see some of you in the future.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.